about those issues. I got about 15 minutes, and I wanted to bring Joe back up because when we were talking about issues last time, he didn't get to talk about one issue that that directly impacts you. So I wanted to reserve some of my time for him to talk to you about those issues. I would tell you that the first quality of life issue is really water, right? And how are realtors tied into water? Well, you're tied into water because if we don't have water, you're not going to sell homes, right? Mm-hmm. And the solution is not so simple as, well, we just need to go find water somewhere, right? The solutions are difficult, the solutions are complex, but it's a quality of life issue that's got to get solved. And there are good people working on that issue. How does the association get involved? Well, you had a representative, and actually let me back up one step. Associated with water are, in my mind, two critical issues. One is where is it going to come from in the future, right? Because Lake Mead, we all know Lake Mead's not going to sustain us, and we know particularly with the lack of snowfall in the Rockies this year and what's going on in California, that's going to be a huge issue and a huge problem for us. We can't just go steal water from northern Nevada, okay? One, the legislature's not going to let that happen, I'm pretty sure. Two, the impact on rural Nevada. Who's been to rural Nevada, just out of curiosity? Okay, it's a really good experience, and you need to go see that. That's a part of Nevada that looks nothing like Las Vegas, but they're part of this state, and they're an important resource and an economic driver of this state. So I encourage you to, if you can get out to Elko one of these days, or Ely, you should take advantage of that. The impact of drawing water out of one farmer deciding to sell his water to the Las Vegas Water Authority has got huge ramifications for not only his farm, but the farmers around him because of draws on aquifers and other issues, and what it does to ranching communities. So it's not as simple as we'll just go build a pipe and draw that water down here. I don't know what the answer is. There's a lot smarter people than me trying to figure that out. The other issue is who pays for that water, and the whole pipe debate of water rates and the reset of water rates. That was really about who should pay for the water and the building of the third straw into Lake Mead. And we used to have a system that the developers, the home builders, kept paying for it, and we didn't have any problems and any issues with it. But as NATS members have run into problems, we've got these horrendous I call them horrendous public policy issues that we're now facing. I'm telling you, from a residential standpoint, we're going to get hit more with those in the future. That problem is not going away. So that's one. Water is certainly one quality of life issue in my mind. The second is taxes and tax policy, and we touched on it a little bit last week when I was talking to you. What's driving the margins tax? Driving the margins tax is education. And when I talk about tax policy, I'm talking about state tax policy. I'm not talking about local tax policy. And the state, and Marcus is a lot smarter than I am. He can tell you the problems with the state budget and where we're at. And can we cut another $1 billion out of the state budget? I'm telling you, we can't. We just can't. So we've got a mental health crisis. We've got an education crisis, and those are the two big issues that the legislature deals with and grapples with. Tax policy at a state level is being driven largely by some of the challenges that the legislature is facing, and again, those are quality of life issues from the standpoint of you all don't want to pay a sales tax on service, right? The business community, thank you, the business community doesn't want to pay 5 more hours, right? Not 5 more minutes. The business community doesn't want to pay a margins tax. We don't have a state business income tax. Some members are avoiding paying a state business license. We've got to come to grips in reality with that dialogue and that conversation. So again, in businesses, businesses, Marcus would tell you, businesses move here because they want a well-educated workforce and they want a stable tax policy, right? Neither of which, as a state, we have right now. And if businesses aren't moving here, guess what? You're not selling homes, right? And I will, I've touched a little bit on schools. I think that's a challenge, education and education policy. I think mental health. I think mental health is the emerging public policy issue for this legislature and legislatures in the future. And we're getting exactly what we asked for, what we wanted. We demanded of Jim Gibbons in the legislature back in 7 and 9 that they cut the fat out of the budget, out of the state budget. And I remember I was going back looking in past presentations that I've given to the Realtors Association, and when we talked to you all in 2009 about the budget and what happened post-session, I said there's going to be a problem with mental health because the largest amount of cuts back in 2009 came out of mental health. And so we're reaping what we asked for. We asked for huge cuts in the state budget, and they did that. The legislature responded to that, the governor responded to that. Consequently, the problems that you're reading about today in the RJ and you're seeing on the news is a direct result of those decisions that were made long ago. So I think that's another emerging quality of life issue that we're all going to have to face, because I don't want, thank you, 3 minutes now. I don't want people that are challenged with not being able to access their medications walking around the streets in my neighborhoods. I'm going to let Joe conclude the presentation with a discussion about Henderson, about an issue that he's dealing with out there.
Okay, since we're pressing time, I scaled it down to about 30 minutes, so I'll make it quick. Basically, there's, don't yell on this. I was, a few days ago, I was up at Henderson, addressing their city council for a hearing. And it's dealing with vacant properties, or they like to call it out there, abandoned properties. Now, the city of Las Vegas in 2011, they addressed this problem, and then a year later, North Las Vegas addressed that problem. If you look at those ordinances, they're pretty much identical. But here's the crux of why we also had to fight for your rights on this. The city of Henderson said, we're going to go through with this because of what happened last year at the state legislature, the 2013 session. So they're dealing with a bill called, or a Nevada revised statute rather, called 107-0795. So that's basically their premise for following through with their abandoned property issue under Municipal Code Chapter 15 for Henderson. So basically, we got 2 out of the 3. In some ways, I'd almost venture to say we got 2.5 out of the 3, but I'll explain that. So one of the things, and sometimes, you know, in a bill, when somebody's drafting it, they can put something in there and they don't realize, you know, the negative ramifications, and it might not be intentional, but it just, something slips in. So for example, one of the things we were able to address and have assurances that when there's an abandoned property, they're not going to have a sign there saying abandoned property. I think we know, you know, that's an invitation for mischief right there. So we're able to get that scratched out. So that's one good thing.
That's good.
Another thing is dealing with the property registries. So at least we got an assurance that while a case is open and or active, they're not going to be releasing that information. You know, again, you know, you got intelligent criminals out there, and you know, they can find out, you know, what properties are vacant and whatnot. So that's another victory. The third one was dealing with property managers. And so what we wanted to, and it was dealing with joint responsibility. And the way the bill is written is that the mortgagee, the property owner, and the property manager would have a joint responsibility. So in other words, if fines are racking up, the property manager, and this is our argument, they have no financial stake in the property. And when we look at NRS 1070795, it's dealing with deeds of trust. Well, the mortgagee or the property owner, they have a financial stake in that property. And our argument was, if there's going to be fines, it's their responsibility, not the property owner. So, anyways, here's why I say 2.5. Because at least we have it on the public record now. And if one of our property managers gets in a situation, our legal counsel here is saying we have multiple points that they can fight that. So,
Joe,
that's basically a summary.
let's take questions if anybody's got it. 'Cause
On the issue of the property management and vacant properties and things like that and racking up fines, couldn't it be something where they have to be somewhat responsible because they do have, even though they don't have a financial stake, they have the responsibility of managing that property? And couldn't they take it back one step to where they could verify if a tenant did or did not receive, say, the HOA package that shows the rules and regulations that would cause these fines? And because a lot of property managers, they don't give them or they don't ensure that those tenants have the rules and regulations, so they're racking up fines, they move on and the fines remain with the property. And the other thing would be, why can't we get the HOAs to publicly put it on their websites, their rules and regulations, rather than having to get a resale package, and then everybody would have access to, if I had 2 pit bulls and I go to rent a house and then I find out after the fact that I can't have those pit bulls, it would be available.
I'll clarify that. With this municipal code, this is coming out of the city of Henderson, so it doesn't have anything to do with the homeowners associations.
Let me take one more question and we'll wrap up.
Just a powerful word, you distinguish vacant versus abandoned. And so was there clarity in the bill on that? Because I'd hate to see, as much as I dislike speculators, they have a right to not rent their property as long as they're following the rules. Or at least
The statute, the state statute is very clear as to, while it doesn't define vacant versus abandoned, there's certain criteria that has to be met in order for it to be considered abandoned. So I think those are the keys. All right, good enough, sir? Very good. A pleasure as always to be with you, and I thank you for doing what you're doing.
I know I didn't give you guys a lot of time today on quality of life, but I just wanted to, I didn't want to get into detail on the legislation there. Just know that our government affairs and through volunteers and our staff, we're paying attention to this sort of thing. I want to give the last 20 minutes or so to Mr. Conklin, who is our associate